The tension in the operations room was unbearable. Captain Jason Carter had just intercepted a critical intelligence breach, and tempers flared. One wrong word, one careless move, and he lost his composure. Before he knew it, he had slammed a subordinate against the wall, only to step back and realize the truth. The woman in front of him, the one he had underestimated, wasn't just any officer. She was Admiral Victoria Hale, his commanding officer. Shock froze him in place. Pride, anger, and embarrassment collided as he realized he had just crossed a line that could have ended his career, and that his commanding admiral was far more formidable than he ever imagined. The operations room buzzed with quiet tension, the faint hum of computers mixing with the distant roar of jets taking off outside. Officers moved briskly between consoles, checking maps, radar screens, and mission plans. Yet the energy in the room was taut, like a rope pulled to its limit. At the center of it all stood Captain Jason Carter, a man whose confidence bordered on arrogance, whose brilliance was rivaled only by his short temper. He paced in front of the main tactical display, jaw tight, eyes flicking from one readout to another. Every officer in the room instinctively gave him space, respecting his authority, but also sensing the storm that brewed beneath his calm exterior. Into this charged atmosphere stepped Lieutenant Victoria Hale, her uniform pristine but understated, her expression calm and measured. Her eyes scanned the schematics on the table before her, and she raised a single, precise correction. "Sir, the trajectory for the intercept leaves a slight blind spot. Adjusting it could reduce exposure to the eastern flank." Jason froze for a heartbeat, his pride flaring at the challenge. He had worked tirelessly on this plan, and now someone he believed to be a junior officer, questioned his judgment. His lips tightened, his hands curling into fists at his sides. "Do you always question me?" he barked, his voice slicing through the room like a whip. Victoria met his gaze evenly, unwavering. "Only when it prevents unnecessary risk, sir." Something inside Jason snapped. The stress, the responsibility, the mounting pressure of an imminent mission all collided, and before he could think, he slammed her against the wall. A sharp thud echoed in the room, followed by a collective gasp. Time seemed to freeze as the other officers froze, wide-eyed and silent. Victoria lifted her head slowly, her eyes locking onto his with a calm authority that immediately cut through his anger. "Captain Carter, you have lessons to learn about respect," she said quietly, deliberately, every word striking like steel. For the first time that day, Jason felt the weight of shock and fear pressing into his chest, the unmistakable feeling that he had just crossed a line he could never undo. The room remained frozen, every officer holding their breath as the tension stretched between them like a taut wire. Jason's chest heaved as he finally took a step back, his mind racing. Something about her composure, the way she had met his fury without flinching, didn't feel like any junior officer he had ever known. Then, with a measured calm that only amplified the shock, Victoria Hale removed the last trace of doubt. "Captain Carter," she said slowly, her voice steady, yet carrying the unmistakable authority of command. "I am Admiral Victoria Hale." Time seemed to stop. The words hit Jason like a thunderbolt, and he staggered slightly, his pride and bravado crumbling in an instant. His eyes widened, his mouth opening, but no words came out. The realization sank into him like ice water. The woman he had just slammed against the wall, the one he had dismissed as inexperienced, was the very person in command of this base, and his superior officer. Around them, murmurs spread through the squadron like wildfire, officers exchanging startled glances, unsure of whether to look at Jason in shock or at the Admiral in awe. For a moment, Jason felt exposed, vulnerable. Every flaw, every impulsive decision laid bare before someone whose reputation alone could silence a room. Victoria's gaze softened slightly, but her authority never wavered. "Captain, what you did could have had serious consequences. Consider this a lesson," she said, each word precise, deliberate, and unavoidable. Jason's pride burned, but beneath it, a quiet seed of respect began to take root. He was witnessing firsthand why she had risen to her rank. Not through force, not through intimidation, but through intellect, composure, and the kind of authority that commanded absolute respect without raising a hand. As the room settled into tense silence, I allowed my mind to drift briefly, recalling the path that had brought me here. Decades of service, countless missions, battles that tested every fiber of my being. Each one had demanded precision, patience, and above all, composure. I had watched young officers rise and fall, some breaking under pressure, others learning too late that impulsiveness could cost lives. Leadership was never about showing strength. It was about guiding others through chaos, making decisions under pressure, and carrying the weight of responsibility without letting it crush you. Jason, in contrast, had always relied on instinct and boldness. He was brilliant. There was no denying that. But brilliance without restraint was a dangerous combination. I had seen his victories, yes, but also his near misses, his rash choices, the times his pride had almost undone an entire operation. Today, he had crossed a line that demanded correction, and I knew that this moment, though uncomfortable for him, could be transformative if handled correctly. I studied him now, his chest rising and falling rapidly, eyes wide with shock, his body frozen in the weight of realization. This was the moment where he would begin to understand that true leadership isn't given or claimed. It is earned, tempered by respect, patience, and the courage to act wisely under pressure. And if he survived this lesson with humility, he might just rise to his full potential. Later that day, I summoned Captain Carter to my office. The door closed behind him with a muted click, and the sudden quiet of the room seemed to amplify every sound. The soft hum of the ventilation, the distant murmur of the bass, even the faint rhythm of his own heartbeat. Jason stood stiffly, hands at his sides, trying to maintain the composure that had always defined him in the field. But I could see through it. The tension coiled in his muscles, the subtle tremor of guilt and uncertainty in his eyes. "Captain Carter," I began, my tone calm, yet carrying the full weight of authority. "Do you understand the severity of your actions earlier?" "Yes, ma'am," he replied, voice low, hesitant, weighed down by shame and disbelief. I studied him for a long moment, letting silence fill the room before continuing. "Physical aggression against any officer is intolerable. Leadership is not about intimidation or anger. It is measured by intelligence, composure, and the respect you command through your actions, not your fists." His jaw tightened, and for a brief moment I saw the struggle within him, pride warring with guilt, stubbornness colliding with the dawning realization that he had been wrong. I didn't," he began, then faltered. Words seemed to fail him, leaving only the raw tension between us. I softened my voice slightly, though my gaze never wavered. "I am not here to humiliate you, Captain. I am here to show you a path forward. Your skills are undeniable, but unchecked impulse can destroy not only your career, but the lives of those under your command. You must learn restraint. You must learn respect." The weight of my words sank in slowly, and I could see the transformation beginning. He was no longer just a brilliant but reckless captain. He was a man confronting his flaws for the first time. The room, silent but heavy with unspoken understanding, became a crucible in which his pride and impulsiveness would either be tempered or broken. The call came just after dawn, shattering the uneasy calm of the base. An enemy vessel had breached the perimeter, moving unpredictably towards sensitive naval assets. The alarm blared, red lights flashing across the operations room, and the entire squadron snapped into action. Jason and I were assigned to coordinate the response, and for the first time since the incident, I saw a noticeable change in him. His usual arrogance had been replaced by a focused intensity, every movement precise, every glance calculated. "Captain Carter," I instructed, my voice cutting through the chaos, "you will lead the intercept formation. I will coordinate reconnaissance and support. Follow my directives without deviation." He nodded without hesitation. No protest, no challenge, just a silent, resolute understanding. The first wave of ships moved into position, guided by our combined strategy. The tension was electric. A single misstep could escalate into disaster. As the operation unfolded, Jason executed each maneuver flawlessly. He responded to enemy unpredictability with adaptability and discipline, relying on strategy rather than instinct. I observed him, silently noting his growth. The pride and impulsiveness that had once defined him were now tempered by trust, patience, and respect. The enemy vessel attempted a daring maneuver, trying to break our intercept. Jason anticipated my commands, coordinated with his team, and executed a precise maneuver that forced the intruder into retreat. The mission, which could have ended in chaos, was completed with surgical efficiency. For the first time, I saw Jason not as a reckless captain, but as a leader capable of greatness. He had learned to subordinate ego to strategy, to act with restraint under extreme pressure, and to trust a superior without question. In the heat of battle, the lesson had been cemented, and the respect that had been withheld now bloomed naturally. The mission concluded, and the operations room slowly returned to its usual rhythm, though the tension still lingered like a fading echo. Officers exchanged relieved smiles. Their respect for both leadership and teamwork quietly deepened. Jason stepped forward, his posture straighter than before, his expression sober but sincere. The arrogance that had once defined him was replaced by humility, a subtle but profound shift in the man I had watched for weeks. "Admiral Hale," he began, his voice steady but tinged with reverence, "I owe you an apology. My behavior earlier was completely unacceptable. I understand now that leadership is not claimed through force or ego, but earned through discipline, composure, and respect. Thank you for showing me the way." I nodded slightly, acknowledging both his apology and the visible change in him. There was a quiet pride in seeing potential finally tempered by wisdom. The room seemed to breathe in unison, as if the atmosphere itself recognized that a transformation had occurred. As I walked through the squadron afterward, observing officers organizing reports and reviewing debriefs, I noted Jason working quietly, offering guidance to his subordinates with patience rather than impatience, listening more than commanding, and giving space for thoughtful input. The lessons had taken root, and his growth was no longer theoretical. It was visible, tangible, and inspiring. In that moment, I realized that leadership's true power lies not in authority alone, but in shaping those around you. Jason had begun his transformation from a brilliant yet impulsive captain into a true leader, capable of commanding respect not through fear, but through understanding, integrity, and earned trust. And that, I knew, was far more valuable than any mission accomplished. As the sun dipped low over the naval base, casting golden streaks across the deck, I stood alone, taking in the quiet aftermath of the day's events. The hum of activity continued around me, officers going about their duties, but a profound stillness settled in my mind. I reflected on the lessons Jason had learned, and in turn, the reminder this day had given me about leadership, patience, and the subtle power of guidance. Jason approached quietly, standing at attention a few paces away, a small but respectful nod acknowledging his growth. He didn't speak, for no words could capture the weight of transformation he had undergone. I allowed him this silent acknowledgement and turned my gaze to the horizon, the fading light illuminating the contours of the ships and the rippling water beyond. Leadership is never about asserting dominance. It is about wisdom, restraint, and the courage to guide others without breaking them. Today had proven that true authority is earned, not assumed. In the crucible of tension, conflict, and high stakes, Jason had begun to understand what it truly meant to be a leader, to inspire respect, to temper pride with humility, and to act with intelligence and compassion even in the face of danger. For me, it was a quiet victory, unseen by many but deeply felt. And as I walked away from the deck, I carried with me the knowledge that the future of this fleet, and perhaps the men and women under Jason's command, was a little brighter because one man had learned the value of respect, patience, and true leadership. I wasn't just an admiral today. I was a teacher, a mirror, a reminder that true leadership is earned, not demanded.